Hello and welcome to the third opposition preview of the season, and it brings me fantastic pleasure today to invite Sam on from Back of the Net, the best Bournemouth podcast, not just the AFCB podcast, but the best Bournemouth podcast. The only Bournemouth podcast, by the way, Sam?
There are a couple of others, but yeah, we like to consider ourselves the main one. Yeah, Chris.
Okay. And how are you? Are you well?
Very good, very good. I'm not enjoying not being able to go to the stadium to watch games, but other than that, I'm doing all right.
And how's the relegation hangover for you?
Still quite raw. I feel as though there were numerous things against us last season, not least our crisis in terms of injuries, but the table doesn't lie. We finished 18th. We feel as though there were probably some worse teams above us in the table, but when push came to shove, we just didn't perform. And in lockdown, after Project Restart, to get off to 4 consecutive losses, we didn't exactly make it easy for ourselves, put it that way.
Join the club. And not to pile on the negativity, Sam, straight away, is the Bournemouth fairy tale over?
Very good question. I don't think it is. And the reason I say that is based on the money that we are getting coming in for the players that we've let go. Players that we assumed would be leaving, such as Callum Wilson, Nathan Ake, of course, Aaron Ramsdale. I think Josh King will follow. And it looks if we could be clawing up to sort of £80 million worth in sales from all them. So as long as that money's reinvested, then I think there's a good chance of maybe getting promotion again this season. And that's what many Bournemouth fans are hoping for. And I'm certainly the same. I think it's been an incredible ride. It's been spearheaded by a particular fella that's no longer at the club. However, I feel as though with the continuity of having Jason Tyndall in charge, we've got a good chance this season.
Love the optimism, Sam. And now, speaking of the devil, Eddie Howe, how does that departure sit with you? You know, is it a heartfelt? Is it really a heartfelt goodbye, or are you a bit annoyed about how it ended up? You know, should you have changed it earlier?
It is a heartfelt goodbye, and I'm glad we didn't change it earlier. I wouldn't have wanted him to leave the club halfway through the season. And historically, in situations like this, when we've been under the cosh, he's always come up trumps. I've got to say that it feels like a different club now. He's not there. He was at the club in his second spell for 7.5 years, and before that, 3 or 4 years. So he is the club. And when you walk around the club, in the stadium, all around, the club's absolutely built around him. And that, I think, actually was a danger with regards to having that next person that would then walk into the club. But we haven't got an external appointment. It was his number 2, which kind of makes sense. It maintains squad harmony. It doesn't mean the players are relearning a new way of playing football. You haven't got like 3 or 4 new members of the coaching staff. Everyone feels pretty raw still, because although he wrote a letter, we'd like to see the guy, because he was looking ill towards the end of his reign at AFC Bournemouth and looking like a broken man. And we'd just like to see him smiling again. And he's obviously taken a break, spending time with his family, and hopefully he'll come back to football very soon.
Sam, I must admit, and maybe it's just because I'm a Norwich fan, I'm a little bit sceptical about what's going on at Bournemouth. I've got big question marks about the debt. I've got big question marks about the wage bill. And I've got question marks also about, hiring a number 2. I know that you're saying it's a positive, that they won't need to relearn a new style of football, play a different way. But then, of course, you could argue they need to play a different way, right?
Yeah, and you know what? Many fans were nonplussed by his appointment. We weren't exactly disappointed, and there were a number of other names that were being mentioned, such as Chris Hughton. As of course, you know about that. People like Gary Monk. People were even mentioning names like John Terry and seeing if we could maybe prize away Stevie G. I mean, come on, we're a small club. I mean, Rangers, of course, the Scottish Premier League is maybe not the most competitive league in the world, but they're getting European football, and it's a huge club. There's no way it would come down to little old Bournemouth. But yeah, it was a questionable appointment. To many, a person that you don't really know how much input he's actually had at the club. And, it seemed to be that everyone was playing to Eddie's rhythm, so to speak, and you don't really know how much of a manager he's going to be. But in terms of the debt, I think that's maybe one of the reasons why Eddie left, because we were going to have to get rid of a number of players. The owner is owed a lot of money. There's a £35 million training complex in progress at the moment, which is going to be state of the art and going to rival Southampton. So, that money needs to be spent. And let's face it, at the moment, we have had no signings whatsoever. And any players that we have been linked with have been in the £1 million, £2 million sort of bracket. So I think maybe Eddie didn't get the assurances that maybe he wanted with regards to his spending power. And Jason Tyndall, perhaps you could call him a yes man. He's someone that was happy to go along with it. So, yeah, it's very murky.
Sam, I know you said you're redeveloping a training ground, and that's massive. Norwich have just done it as well. It makes such a huge difference, particularly when you're trying to bring players in. What are you doing with the stadium? Are you getting a new stadium or not?
Eventually, that's the plan. That's in the long-term vision. But the thing is, at the moment, you've probably seen it when you last came down to the Vitality. Our training pitches are actually right next to the stadium at the moment.
Yeah,
but they're being moved 6 or 7 miles away in a place called Canford, and it's a huge plot of land where there's going to be 9 full-size pitches, all the cardio suites, an indoor pitch, and all that kind of stuff. And the actual place where the current training pitches is on Kings Park, that's the mooted venue for the new stadium, which would be something around 25,000 seater. But you can't do one, without doing the other. So the training ground needs to move first, and then hopefully we can talk about the stadium. But Championship, who knows whether we're going to sell out when fans are back, because we were in the Championship for 2 years before we got promoted, and only the sort of 5 or 10 games on the lead up to promotion actually got sold out. So will there be a need for it? We're not sure. I think they're probably going to be waiting a bit in that department.
So you had a fair few fair weather fans in the Premier League, Sam. Go on, admit it.
Oh yeah, of course, absolutely. A number of Johnny come latelys, and that is, you can see that on Twitter where people are just baying for the club to sign anyone, just make any signings, but they don't really have any idea of the financial situation that we're in. So more seasoned fans like myself can maybe understand why the club's being a little bit more frugal than it used to be, rather than spending £15 million on Jordan Ibe and 20 on Dom Solanke, that kind of thing. That won't happen anymore.
Look, Sam, I'm not going to be two-faced in here and sit here and say, Bournemouth, massive club, love you guys to pieces. I've gone on record saying before that you are a little bit tin pot. Now, have you got to come back to that, Sam? Because I was sitting in the away stand in our 0-0, where, by the way, you should have definitely beaten us that day, in my opinion. We had chances, so did you. I looked to my left. I couldn't quite believe my eyes, Sam, because they were just. It was like the OAP stand. They all had blankets on. Like, honestly, they all had blankets on. I couldn't believe my eyes. Like, do you have a comeback? Am I wrong?
Look, we're a big club now. We've got automated turnstiles. We never had that before. It was usually one man who actually took the tickets. We've got another scoreboard. We are going up in the world. However, you're right. We are a tin pot club, and I think people look at the size of the stadium. West Ham fans were singing "My Garden Shed's Bigger Than This," all those kind of chants that you would expect to hear. And in many ways, we were the laughing stock of the Premier League. But I think, the one thing we did have on our side was the fact that we could out-football a number of teams, pretty much anyone outside the top 6. So that's one thing that we had in our locker. And had we been poor and floated around 16th, 17th each season, then the comments would be more than justified. However, now we're back down to the Championship. For instance, at the weekend, we watched in our last match a horrendous stream, and it was through the club's equivalent service, not iFollow, but their own one. The camera angles were awful. The commentary didn't even work for the first 20 minutes, and that just there was hashtags of tin pot on the AFC Bournemouth timeline. So we probably deserve it, to be honest, Chris.
But do you know what, Sam? Fair play in play, because I poked the bear there, but I really respect the fact that you've admitted it. That is, and I'm sure that a lot of Norwich fans will respect you for that as well. Yeah. Sam, moving on now. Personally, I would be quite optimistic if I was a Bournemouth fan, particularly because of one game when you took West Ham to the carpet cleaners away recently, 5-3. Are you full of optimism for the season? And where are the Bournemouth fans' expectations?
I think that performance really gave us a lot of hope. I mean, we played Benfica in a pre-season friendly in Portugal before that, and we did well. We lost 2-1, but we're deploying a new system, a 3-4-3 now. And when Eddie put that system in place before, it always turned into a flat back five, and it never really worked. But now we seem to have a manager that seems to deploy it well, and we've got players in the right positions. So many times previously, we were putting square pegs in round holes, but players like Arnaud Danjuma, even Dom Solanke, David Brooks and Junior Stanislas seem to be playing with more freedom. And the fact that, you know what, Callum Wilson, I don't consider him a big loss. Aaron Ramsdale, I do, in terms of his personality, and he formed the base of the spine of the team. Ryan Fraser, not really worried about him going. Nathan Ake, of course, was huge, but still, you've got individuals that you can think, if they stay, we've got a chance. And so Josh King might be around for a bit. David Brooks, Arnaud Danjuma, who's been scoring for fun recently, Jefferson Lerma in midfield, and also youngsters of the future like Lloyd Kelly and stalwarts like Steve Cook. We've got the right blend there. And if we can add to that, the only problem we've got this season is maybe squad depth. And if we see some players being injured, that's where we could get unstuck really quickly. However, yeah, signs are fairly positive. And I would be really disappointed if we didn't finish in the top 6.
Interesting, very interesting indeed. And so you've touched on a couple there, Sam. But going into the game against Norwich at the Vitality at the weekend, who are the players that you feel could do damage to the Canaries?
I think our front three really, it depends how Norwich set up really, because when we played Middlesbrough in our last league match, I think they set up really well against us. And when Norwich, when we played them at the start of last season, and also Sheffield United as well, we faced a team that was very well drilled. But this season it's going to be different for you, because you want to go out and win the league and you're going to go out and attack. But in this one, I don't know. I think it's going to be a game of chess a little bit more than I expect. But players to look out for are now Danjuma on the left side of the front three. I think that David Brooks will probably be back, and we all know what he's about from being in the Premier League. But I think our midfield duo of Jefferson Lerma, the Colombian, and Lewis Cook as well. I think he's very dynamic, drives forward, spreads the ball left and right. I would say it's more in our sort of attacking half that I would place the focus, and we could do some damage.
And then to flip that round, who are you worried about coming up against in terms of that Norwich City team? Is there a particular player that you look at and you go, oof, I don't fancy coming up against him at the weekend?
Not particularly an individual that I'm concerned about at the moment, but I just think that the way you came back in your last fixture, showed a bit of team spirit. Whereas we went 1-0 up and then ended up conceding late, it was the other way round for you. And I don't know. It's just there's a lot of unknowns, because you've made a lot of signings, and a lot of Cherries fans have been looking at the incomings at Carrow Road and thinking, why aren't we doing that? We just can't afford it. And Norwich have got a good model. I know that relegation was awful last season, and it was probably very let's face it, you didn't enjoy it, did you? But you seem to be one of those teams, almost like West Brom, that will always be there and thereabouts this season. And I've got no doubt you will. So, I just think there's a team where, very concerned about you this season. And I think it's going to be a very interesting and absorbing game. And it might well give us an insight into how the rest of the season is going to go.
Sam, that is music to my ears. And what wasn't a decent display is the 0-0 at the Vitality last time out. Norwich, of course, for all the Norwich fans listening and watching, will remember it, because we had a makeshift defence. Ben Godfrey got injured. We had Amadou, who's now left, who's a midfielder at the back. We had Tete, old school Alexander Tete, at the back as well. Bournemouth couldn't break us down. Pretty miserable game. I only remember Norwich having maybe a couple of chances. Tom Tribal hit the crossbar. I think Bournemouth probably had the better of the chances. What did you think that day of Norwich, Sam, if you don't mind me asking? Like, did you think, these are relegation fodder with us?
Oh, it's difficult to say, really. I didn't at the time. I think it was relatively early in the season, so I didn't necessarily feel as though that you were going to be relegation fodder. But I think the natural way of being promoted from the Championship means you're going to be there or thereabouts, and not many teams tend to finish high up. Unlike Sheffield United, of course, as they finished top 10. So they were a bit of a one-off. But I thought that you were very well organised, and you had this low block, which meant that we just could not get through your banks at all, and it was really frustrating. And Bournemouth are famed for having fast starts. We couldn't do that against you, and that's the fear that I had actually at the weekend in our last match, and I just hope that there's not going to be much repeat. But it's a shame, really, that it didn't happen for you last season in the Premier League, because I saw that match against Man City, and I even saw your vlog on the channel, and I thought, well, these boys could pull off some shock results. But it was one of few high points last year, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It's a shame because, as you say, and after that Man City game, we lost our heads, completely lost our heads. I think that we thought, well, if we can do this against the one of the best teams in Europe, probably arguably one of the best teams in the world as well, why can't we stay up? And we just fell apart in the Premier League restart. But anyway, let's not go there. Come on, let's not bring up those negative memories. Sam, do you know what I'm really interested to hear about? I'm really interested to hear about how you think you will line up against us.
Okay, so I think I could probably name the team. I think it'll be a 3-4-3 formation. The only the goalkeeper probably going to be Asmir Begovic in goal, which is one of the players that I thought would shift on because of his high wage demands, actually. But whether that's going to happen or not sure. But probably him in goal. And then at the back, we'll probably have Lloyd Kelly, Steve Cook and Chris Mepham. And then 4 across the midfield, likely to be Jack Stacey on the right, ex-Luton Town, but is proving to be absolutely fantastic for Bournemouth in that spot at the moment. And Adam Smith on the left-hand side with Jefferson Lerma and Lewis Cook in the middle. And up front, it will be Dom Solanke, who seems to be rejuvenated. Thankfully, we're getting some value out of that 20 million we spent now. And then it'll be Junior Stanislas or David Brooks. I'd opt for Stanislas. And maybe even Josh King could slip in there, but I doubt it. It'll probably be on the bench, and it'll be Arnaud Danjuma that starts alongside Brooks or Solanke and Stanislas.
So to me, Sam, that sounds like you're going to go for it, which is really interesting because I see that Norwich City will go for it as well. I don't think we're going to rock up at your place and try and get a point. I don't mean that arrogantly. So I think that I think it will be a great display of football for sure. It's really interesting, Sam, because the head-to-head ahead of this game, Norwich have won 24, Bournemouth have won 19. We've drawn 16 times. So let's get it from you right here, right now. Your score prediction, what is your head saying and what is your heart saying?
Well, firstly, I'm actually disappointed it's not on TV. But for us beating Crystal Palace in the second round of the Carabao Cup, matches had to be moved around, and that 100,000 fee that we would have had now is being given to Huddersfield for showing their Friday night match. So I think we got £7,000 for progressing to the third round. So we're 93 grand down, plus Bournemouth fans have to pay a tenner to watch the game, and also a tenner to watch Man City, so we're £20 down. But in terms of the result, I'm feeling positive about it, actually. My heart says that Bournemouth will win. I don't think it's going to be close, though. I think it could be a high-scoring affair because we are conceding goals at the moment. I think 3-2 to Bournemouth says my heart, but my head, I don't know, probably a 1-1.
Oh, see, you're the most positive fan we've had on yet. You're predicting a win, or a draw, but and I have to say, Sam, I'm unfortunately predicting a draw as well. My heart is saying 3-1 Norwich,
okay,
but my head is saying 2-2. I think there'll be goals. I do think there'll be goals in this. I can't see certainly our defence keeping a clean sheet, and I think that our attacking threat, particularly down either wing, will cause you some damage. Sam, where can people best give you stick?
They can give us stick on Twitter. So follow us at AFCB Podcast. We're a podcast that's been around since 2016, but we've been doing YouTube stuff last season. Kiss of death for our Premier League status, but never mind. We're covering the Championship, and so just search Back of the Net Bournemouth on YouTube, and you can find us there as well.
I'll make sure that the link is dropped down in the description below. Sam, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Chris, it's been a pleasure. Thanks very much.
And thank you very much to all of you that are watching or listening to this right now. That is, of course, the third opposition preview of the season. And I hope that next time we speak will be on Saturday night, as always, with a crisp, cold Estrella in my hand after Norwich City 3 points. Cheers, guys.